Close your eyes. The past is about to speak. When you think of the great Australian gold rush, you might picture a sun-drenched landscape of rugged, cheerful men with broad-brimmed hats, striking it rich with a triumphant cry. You imagine giant, gleaming nuggets being pulled from the earth as easily as potatoes, followed by nights of hearty laughter around a campfire. It's a tale of adventure, mateship, and instant fortunes made under the brilliant Southern Cross. But the reality for the thousands who flocked to the Victorian goldfields in the 1850s was something else entirely. For most, it was a waking nightmare of mud, disease, and back-breaking monotony. The camps were sprawling, unsanitary canvas slums where the air was thick with smoke, flies, and the scent of desperation. Frankly, with your modern sensibilities, you likely wouldn't have lasted a single day. It's always wonderful to see where you're all tuning in from, so please feel free to drop your city or country and the local time in the comments below. It connects us all in this quiet space. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your journey is over, but your ordeal is just beginning. For weeks, you have walked. You have walked until your boots, once sturdy and new, have become extensions of your own sore feet, the leather cracked and the soles worn thin. The heavy swag on your back, containing all your worldly possessions, has molded itself to the curve of your spine, a constant, dull ache that has become your companion. The grand adventure you signed up for back in England has mostly consisted of dust, bully beef, and the relentless drone of insects. The ship was a purgatory of sickness and boredom, and the long trek from Melbourne has been a lesson in endurance you never asked for. You pause now at the crest of a shallow, wooded ridge, leaning against the rough bark of a eucalyptus tree. The air, for the first time in an hour, carries a different quality. It's heavier, filled with a low, persistent hum, like a distant beehive of immense size. And there is a smell, a complex blend of damp earth, acrid wood smoke, and something else, something vaguely organic and unpleasant that you can't quite place. This is it, the diggings. Below you, a wide valley has been torn apart. What was once a gentle, winding creek surrounded by grassy flats is now a scene of utter chaos, a festering wound gouged into the earth. The landscape is gone, replaced by a frenetic, man-made geography of upturned soil, muddy pits, and heaps of gravel. The creek itself is a thick, brown slurry, its banks lined with an army of men, all hunched over contraptions of wood and metal. And stretching away from this frantic artery of labor, covering every available foot of ground, is a city of tents. Thousands upon thousands of them, a sea of white, gray, and smoke-stained canvas, patched and stained, huddled together without logic or design. A thin blue haze from countless campfires hangs over the entire scene, softening the harsh edges but doing little to conceal the scale of the devastation. Your heart, which had been buoyed by the prospect of arrival, sinks a little. This is not the orderly camp of your imagination. It is a sprawling, temporary metropolis built on a foundation of mud and hope. There is no welcome sign, no tidy main street, no one to greet you. Your only welcome committee is a persistent swarm of flies that have decided your sweaty face is the most interesting thing in the vicinity. You take a long pull from your water canteen. The water is warm and tastes of metal, but it's wet. You adjust the swag on your shoulders and begin the slow descent into the valley, into the noise and the mess. As you get closer, the low hum separates into individual sounds. You hear the rhythmic squeak and rumble of the gold-washing cradles, a sound that will soon become the soundtrack to your life. There is the dull thud of pickaxes striking the earth, the scrape of shovels on rock, and the murmur of 1,000 conversations in 12 different accents: Cornish, Irish, Scottish, German, and the distinctive cadence of American prospectors fresh from the Californian fields. It's a babel of noise, a symphony of labor. You step from the dry, dusty ground of the forest onto the churned-up earth of the diggings, and your boots immediately sink into thick, tacky mud. It clings to you, heavy and greedy. The paths, such as they are treacherous channels of sludge, weaving between tents pegged so close together their ropes overlap. You have to watch every step to avoid tripping over a tent peg, falling into a shallow pit, or stumbling into a pile of discarded refuse. The smell is stronger here, a mix of frying mutton, stale beer, unwashed laundry, and the ever-present latrine-like odor from the polluted creek. The men you pass barely give you a second glance. Their faces are bearded and sunburnt, their eyes either narrowed in intense concentration on their work or carrying a hollow, weary look. They are dressed in a uniform of grime: flannel shirts, rough trousers held up with braces, and heavy boots caked in mud. You feel utterly conspicuous in your relatively clean traveling clothes, a newcomer marked by your lack of dirt. Historians still argue about the sheer amount of gold that came out of these fields, as the official records only track the gold carried by government escorts. Many believe that a vast quantity was moved through private hands, a shadow economy of dust and nuggets that defied any official tally. But looking at the sheer number of men toiling here, you realize that even a mountain of gold, when divided by this many hands, might not amount to much for any single person. The dream was of finding nuggets the size of your fist lying in the open. The reality, you're beginning to suspect, is what you see all around you: men washing endless tons of dirt for a few glittering specks of what they call color. It's not a treasure hunt. It's an industrial process powered by human muscle. You find a small, unclaimed patch of ground, barely large enough for your swag, pressed between a rowdy-looking tent and a freshly dug shaft. There is no privacy, no peace. You can hear the conversation of the men in the tent next to you as if they were sitting in your lap. You slump down onto your bedroll, the exhaustion of the journey settling into your bones like a deep chill. This is your new home, a chaotic, noisy, and profoundly smelly corner of a canvas city, filled with strangers who are also your rivals. The sun begins to dip below the ridge, painting the smoke-filled sky in hues of orange and purple, a beautiful sight that feels like a cruel joke. The hope that propelled you across the world hasn't vanished, but it's been bruised, reshaped by the overwhelming, muddy reality of the diggings. For now, survival is the only goal. The first morning is a rude awakening. You aren't roused by a gentle sunrise, but by the percussive symphony of industry starting at the first hint of gray light. The rhythmic rocking of cradles, the scrape of shovels, and a nearby argument over a shared water barrel jolt you from a shallow, restless sleep. You open your eyes to the stained canvas just inches from your face. The air inside your small sleeping space is stale and cold, and the ground beneath your thin bedroll feels damp and unforgiving. Outside, the sounds are already at full volume, as if the entire camp operates on a switch that has just been thrown. There is no slow easing into the day here. The race for gold waits for no one. You crawl out from your swag, your back and joints protesting the hard ground. The scene is exactly as you left it, only now it's alive with frantic energy. Men are already waist deep in muddy water, heaving buckets of dirt. The smoke from hundreds of breakfast fires stings your eyes and catches in your throat. The smell of frying mutton fat mingles with the ever-present stench of the creek, a combination your stomach is not yet prepared for. You chew on a piece of hard, dry biscuit from your dwindling supplies. It's a miserable breakfast, gritty and tasteless, but it's fuel. There's no time for self-pity. You are a man without a claim, which in this world means you are a man without purpose. You are just another obstacle, another body taking up space. To find your own patch of earth, you must first understand the rules. You watch and you listen, picking up the local customs. A claim, you learn, is a strictly regulated piece of real estate. On this particular field, the rule is 12 feet by 12 feet per man, a tiny square. A partnership of two men can claim 24 by 12 feet, and so on. This isn't the vast expanse you imagined. It's a postage stamp of mud. Once you find an unclaimed piece of ground, you must mark its corners with wooden pegs and then register it with the gold commissioner. Only then do you have the right to break the ground. It's a system designed to impose a sliver of order on pure chaos, but it feels more like a way to pack as many hopefuls as possible into one exhausted valley. So your search begins. You walk the labyrinth of pits and mounds, your eyes scanning for any patch of earth that isn't already being furiously worked. It feels like searching for a seat in a crowded theater long after the show has started. Every viable-looking spot is occupied. Men look up from their work as you pass, their eyes narrowed with suspicion. A newcomer sniffing around the edges of their territory is a potential threat, a claim jumper in the making. You are met with stony glares and the occasional gruff, "Keep movin', mate." The air is thick with a kind of territorial anxiety. There is no sense of community here, only a collection of individuals locked in a silent, muddy competition. You see claims in all states of progress. Some are fresh, the grass barely scraped away. Others are deep, timber-supported shafts disappearing into the earth, the work of established teams. And many are abandoned, shallow pits littered with broken tools and shattered hopes, already filling with scummy water. You are tempted by these, but a cynical-looking digger, noticing your interest, spits a stream of tobacco juice near your boot. "Worked out," he grunts without looking at you. "Nothing there but heartache." It's a common piece of digger wisdom. If a claim is abandoned, there's a very good reason. No one walks away from paying dirt. You find yourself drawn to the fringes of the main rush, where the digging is less frantic. Here, the ground is marshier, the mud deeper. It's less appealing territory, which is precisely why it's not yet fully claimed. After another hour of fruitless searching, you find it. A small square of soggy, tussock-filled ground, squeezed between a large, sullen-looking pile of tailings from a neighboring claim and the stagnant, mosquito-infested edge of a swampy pool. No one could possibly want this. It's a miserable, waterlogged piece of land. It is perfect. From your swag, you pull out the small hand axe you carried all this way. You find a fallen branch of a eucalyptus tree and begin hacking it into 4 rough, pointed stakes. The work is clumsy, and you nearly take a finger off, but eventually, you have your pegs. Then comes the ridiculous ceremony of possession. You pace out your 12 feet by 12 feet, your boots sinking into the soft ground with every step. You hammer the first peg into the earth with the back of the axe. The sound is small and pathetic amidst the din of the camp, but to you, it is monumental. This is your corner of the world. You hammer in the other 3, creating a crude, almost laughable rectangle of ownership. This tiny patch of mud is now your entire world. It is your office, your factory, your bank, and your burden. Looking at the 4 pegs, you don't feel the triumphant thrill of a landowner. You feel the immense weight of the task ahead. All your hopes, the reason you sailed halfway across the world, are now contained within this 144 square feet of soggy Australian soil. Historians note that this system of small, individual claims was unique to the Australian fields compared to the larger group claims common in California. This fostered a spirit of intense, almost desperate individualism. Your success or failure rests entirely on your own shoulders and the luck of this specific patch of dirt. You see a man on a nearby claim doing almost nothing. He shovels a bit of dirt, pauses, looks around, then sits for a while. You learn later this is a practice called shepherding, doing the absolute minimum work required by law to hold onto a claim. He's not digging for gold. He's waiting, perhaps for a partner to arrive, or for news of a rush somewhere else. It's a tactic that infuriates the serious diggers, who see it as tying up valuable ground. It's like someone saving a parking spot for a friend who might never arrive, and you feel a flash of modern, relatable annoyance. Standing in the center of your newly acquired territory, you feel a strange mix of terror and determination. The mud squelches under your boots. The air is damp. The work ahead seems impossible. But for the first time since you arrived, you are no longer a spectator. You have a place. You have a task. You have staked your claim, a tiny, defiant act of hope in a landscape of desperation. Now the real work can begin. Now that you have your patch of earth, you need the tools to work it. Your meager supplies consist of a shovel you bought in Melbourne, a pickaxe, and a couple of metal pans. You quickly realize this is like trying to build a house with only a hammer. To have any real chance, you need a cradle. The cradle, or rocker, is the essential piece of machinery on the diggings. It is the engine of this entire enterprise, a simple but ingenious device for separating gold from dirt on a larger scale than mere panning. You spend the morning observing the men around you, studying their technique. The cradle is essentially a long, open-topped wooden box mounted on curved rockers, like those of a child's cradle. At the top is a sieve, a metal sheet punched full of holes. The whole contraption sits at a slight downward angle. The process is a 2-man operation, a ballet of mud and water. One man shovels dirt, or wash dirt, as they call it, into the sieve. The other man continuously pours buckets of water over the dirt while rocking the cradle back and forth with a handle. The water turns the dirt into a slurry, which flows through the holes in the sieve. The larger stones and pebbles are caught and tossed aside. The finer slurry of mud, sand, and, hopefully, gold flows down the inclined floor of the cradle. Along the floor are a series of wooden bars called riffles. These bars disrupt the flow of the water, creating eddies where heavy particles can settle. Gold, being incredibly dense, sinks to the bottom and gets trapped behind these riffles. The lighter mud and sand wash out the end of the cradle and are discarded. It's a beautifully simple application of physics, and it is brutally hard work. Without a partner, you face a dilemma. You could try to do it all yourself, shovel, pour, and rock, but this would be agonizingly slow and inefficient. You need a partner, but trust is a rare commodity here. A partner could cheat you, steal from you in the night, or simply be lazy. For now, you decide to focus on what you can control. You need a cradle. A new one from the camp's carpenter is impossibly expensive, a price calculated to exploit the desperation of newcomers. Your only other option is to find a used one. You wander through the camp, past the various stores, large tents with crude signs advertising shovels and picks or best quality flour. You find a man selling second-hand equipment. His wares are laid out on a grimy blanket, rusty pick heads, shovels with splintered handles, and two sorry-looking cradles. One has a huge crack down the side, and the other looks like it has been submerged in the creek for a month. The wood is warped and slimy. The seller, a man with shifty eyes and a missing front tooth, assures you it's a first-rate machine, just needs a little love. You haggle, feeling utterly out of your depth. Every price he names feels like extortion. You finally settle on a price that costs you a significant chunk of your remaining cash, and you become the proud owner of a dilapidated piece of mining equipment. You drag your purchase back to your claim. It's heavier than it looks, and by the time you get it there, you're covered in sweat and grime. Closer inspection reveals the cradle is in worse shape than you thought. The rockers are uneven, and the sieve is rusted through in several places. You spend the rest of the afternoon on repairs. You use strips of canvas from your own supplies to patch the leaking seams, securing them with tacks you bought at an exorbitant price. You use your axe to shave down one of the rockers, trying to make it level. It's frustrating, amateurish work. You feel less like a hopeful prospector and more like a desperate handyman trying to fix a broken toy. Finally, it's ready, or as ready as it's going to be. Now for the labor itself. You dig your first bucket of washed dirt. The ground is tough, a mix of stiff clay and sharp gravel that resists your shovel. You heave the heavy bucket to the head of your cradle. Then you trudge to the creek, or rather, the foul-smelling channel of brown water that was once a creek. You fill another bucket with the murky liquid and carry it back. Now comes the awkward solo dance. You pour some water with one hand while trying to rock the cradle with the other. Then you drop the water bucket, grab the shovel, and scoop some dirt into the sieve. Then back to the water and back to rocking. It is a disaster. The cradle wobbles precariously on its uneven rockers. The water sloshes everywhere except where it's supposed to go. The mud doesn't form a nice slurry but a thick, uncooperative sludge. After 10 minutes, your back is screaming in protest. Your arms feel like lead, and you are coated from head to toe in a film of greasy mud. This is the deconstructed reality behind the romantic image of the gold prospector. There is no eureka moment, no thrill of discovery. There is only this, the relentless, monotonous, and punishing cycle of digging, carrying, pouring, and rocking. It's factory work, but your factory is a mud pit. Your machine is a piece of junk, and your only supervisor is your own dwindling hope. One quirky fact about this process is the surprising skill it took. Experienced miners developed an almost intuitive feel for the movement of the cradle. They could tell by the sound and the feel of the rocking motion whether they were processing the dirt effectively. A good cradler could maximize the gold captured while minimizing the water and effort used. A skill that could mean the difference between a small profit and a total loss. You, however, feel like you're just making mud pies on an industrial scale. After an hour of this torture, you stop. You are exhausted, demoralized, and filthy. You peer into the bottom of your cradle behind the little wooden riffles. You scrape out the accumulated sludge with your fingers and plop it into your metal pan. Your heart pounds a little faster. This is it, the moment of truth. You take the pan to the creek's edge and begin the delicate process of panning, swirling the water to wash away the lighter sand and mud. The slurry thins. You watch intently, your eyes straining. More mud washes away. You are left with a small amount of black sand and nothing, not a speck, not a glimmer. All that work for absolutely nothing. You slump down on the muddy bank, the empty pan in your lap. The sun is hot, the flies are merciless, and the noise of 1,000 other cradles seems to mock you. You realize that the gold isn't just hiding in the dirt. It's hiding behind a wall of labor so immense that it seems designed to break you. But as you sit there, you see the men around you. They are just as tired, just as dirty. Yet they continue. They shovel, they pour, they rock. Their endurance, their sheer stubborn refusal to quit, is a silent lesson. You get up, pick up your bucket, and walk back to your claim. There's more dirt to wash. As the sky darkens and the sounds of labor slowly subside, replaced by the crackle of campfires and the murmur of evening conversations, your thoughts turn to shelter. Your current sleeping arrangement, a simple bedroll under the stars, is not a sustainable solution. A heavy dew already blankets everything with a slick film of moisture, and the nights are getting colder. You need a home, but the word home feels like a wild exaggeration for what you are about to construct. Your home will be a tent. It's the standard housing of the goldfields, the universal symbol of this transient, rootless existence. Back in Melbourne, you purchased a sturdy canvas tent, which has been the heaviest and most cumbersome part of your swag. Now you finally get to unpack it. It's a simple calico design, essentially a single large sheet of fabric designed to be draped over a ridgepole, its sides pegged to the ground. It offers the barest minimum of shelter from the elements. The first challenge is clearing a space. Your 12 by 12-foot claim is already crowded with your clumsy cradle and a growing pile of excavated dirt. There is barely enough flat, or semi-flat, ground left to pitch a tent. You spend a precious hour of fading, light shoveling and scraping, trying to create a level patch of earth just large enough for you to lie down in. The ground is hard and stony in some places, soft and muddy in others. Creating a perfectly flat surface is an impossible dream. You settle for lumpy. Next, you need a frame. The tent didn't come with poles. You are expected to source your own. This means another trip to the thin forest that borders the diggings. You take your small axe and search for two strong, straight saplings of roughly equal height to serve as uprights, and one long, sturdy branch for the ridgepole. The surrounding bush has been heavily scavenged by the thousands of miners who came before you. All the good, straight timber near the camp has long since been taken for firewood, tent poles, or for shoring up mine shafts. You have to venture further than you'd like, pushing through scratchy undergrowth as dusk settles. You finally find what you need and drag the branches back to your claim, acquiring a new collection of scratches and scrapes in the process. Now for the construction. It's a clumsy, one-man operation. You try to prop up the ridgepole on the two uprights, but it keeps collapsing. You try to drape the heavy canvas over the top, but it snags and slips. Men in the neighboring tents watch your struggles with a mixture of amusement and indifference. There are no friendly neighbors offering a helping hand, no welcoming committee. The ethos here is one of self-reliance, which is a polite term for you're on your own. There's no Home Depot to run to, no YouTube tutorial to watch. You are figuring it out through frustrating trial and error. After what feels like an eternity, you manage to get the basic structure up. The ridgepole sags in the middle, and one of the uprights is leaning at a precarious angle, but it's standing. You pull the canvas taut and begin hammering in the tent pegs, driving them deep into the unforgiving ground. Finally, you crawl inside. The space is tiny, barely long enough for you to stretch out, and so narrow that your shoulders brush the sides. The air inside is already stuffy, smelling of damp canvas and dust. This small, fragile bubble of fabric is now your entire private world. It is your bedroom, your storage space, and your refuge from the elements. The concept of privacy has been completely redefined. You can hear every word of the argument your neighbors are having about a lost shovel. You can hear the snores of a man in another tent 50 feet away. You can smell what everyone within 100-foot radius is cooking for dinner. The thin canvas walls offer a visual barrier, but they do nothing to block out the sounds and smells of the camp. You unroll your swag inside. Your bed is a thin blanket on top of lumpy, damp earth. You light a candle, and the small space is filled with a warm, flickering glow. The shadows dance on the canvas walls, making the tiny enclosure feel even more confining. It's in these quiet moments that the profound isolation of this life truly sinks in. You are surrounded by thousands of people, yet you have never felt more alone. Historians often speak of the egalitarian nature of the goldfields, where a man was judged by his work ethic rather than his background. And it's true to an extent. Your tiny tent is not much different from the one occupied by the man who was a lawyer back in London, or the one belonging to the illiterate farmhand from Ireland. Shelter, like misery, is a great equalizer. However, this equality was one of stripped-down basic survival. It wasn't about shared prosperity, but a shared lack of comfort. You lie back on your bedroll, hands behind your head, staring up at the sagging ridgepole. You think about your real home, the one you left behind. You picture solid walls, a proper roof, a soft bed, a door that locks. These simple things now seem like unimaginable luxuries. You miss the mundane comforts you once took for granted. The ability to stand up straight in your own bedroom, the silence of a closed door, the feeling of a clean floor beneath your feet. You wonder if you made a terrible mistake. A quirky and rather grim tidbit about these canvas homes was their flammability. A stray spark from a campfire, an overturned candle, or a dropped pipe could turn a tent into an inferno in seconds. Campfires were a regular and terrifying occurrence, capable of wiping out dozens of homes in minutes, leaving their occupants with nothing but the clothes on their backs. This constant, low-level anxiety was just another part of daily life. As you lie there, you feel a new appreciation for the simple resilience of the human spirit. For thousands of people, this was home. They adapted. They found ways to make these cramped, flimsy shelters livable. They built small shelves from packing crates, dug shallow trenches around their tents to divert rainwater, and used flour sacks to patch holes. They created a semblance of domesticity in the midst of chaos. Exhausted, you blow out the candle, plunging your tiny world into darkness. The cacophony of the camp is your new lullaby. You pull the thin blanket up to your chin and try to find a comfortable position on the lumpy ground, hoping that sleep will offer a temporary escape. Morning arrives again, not with a jolt, but with a slow, creeping awareness of hunger. The hard biscuit from yesterday is a distant memory, and the physical labor of setting up your claim and cradle has left you feeling hollowed out. A man cannot live on hope alone. He needs food. And on the goldfields, acquiring food is an adventure in itself, a journey into a world of inflated prices, questionable quality, and culinary despair. You leave the relative privacy of your tent and survey the morning camp. The air is thick with the smoke from breakfast fires. The universal meal seems to be mutton and damper. Damper is the staple bread of the bush, a simple mix of flour, water, and a little salt, slapped into a round cake and baked in the hot ashes of a campfire. It's dense, heavy, and often scorched on the outside while being doughy on the inside. When fresh, it's tolerable. When a day old, it could be used as a building material. You have a little flour left, so you decide to try your hand at making your own. You mix it with some of the murky creek water in your panning dish, a decision you immediately regret, as small bits of grit and leaf debris get into the dough. You form a clumsy patty and nestle it in the hot coals of your small fire. While it bakes, you watch your neighbors. They are frying up thick, greasy chops of mutton in a pan. The smell is both tantalizing and slightly nauseating. Mutton, mutton, and more mutton. It's the only meat readily available. The goldfields are a sea of sheep, driven in on the hoof from vast pastoral stations and butchered on site. The quality is poor, the meat often tough and fatty, but it's protein. After a while, you retrieve your damper from the fire. It's blackened on one side and pale on the other. You break it open. A small cloud of ash puffs out, and the inside is indeed a sticky, uncooked paste. You eat the cooked edges which taste of smoke and grit. It's a profoundly unsatisfying meal. This, you realize, is why there are stores. You head towards the commercial heart of the camp, a chaotic row of larger tents and a few slapdash wooden shanties that serve as shops. The prices are scrawled on chalkboards or pieces of wood. You stare in disbelief. Everything is grotesquely expensive. A bag of flour that would cost a few shillings in Melbourne costs a whole pound here, more than a week's wages for a laborer back home. Sugar, tea, salt, bacon, all are sold at prices that can only be described as predatory. The storekeepers, or flour and scalers as the diggers call them, are making their fortunes not from digging, but from feeding the diggers. There's no Yelp review to consult, no consumer protection agency. You either pay the price or you go hungry. The reason for these prices is simple: logistics. Every single item, from flour and sugar to picks and shovels, had to be hauled for hundreds of miles from the ports of Melbourne or Geelong. The journey was made by slow-moving bullock drays over roads that were often little more than impassable tracks of mud. Teamsters charged exorbitant freight rates, and storekeepers passed that cost, and then some, onto the miners. Historians have confirmed that many of the biggest fortunes of the gold rush were made by these merchants and suppliers, not the men doing the actual digging. You buy a small quantity of flour, a slab of heavily salted mutton, and some tea. The transaction empties your pockets of an alarming amount of your remaining cash. You also notice the quality. The flour looks gray and has a faint, musty smell. The sugar is coarse and brownish, likely mixed with sand to increase its weight, a common and infuriating scam. This practice of adulteration was rampant. Besides sand in the sugar, sellers would add anything from chalk dust to ground-up beans to their flour. It was a world of buyer beware in its most literal sense. With your meager provisions, you return to your claim. That evening, you cook your first proper meal. You fry the mutton in your pan over the fire. It spits and sizzles, filling the air with a greasy smoke. You boil some of the creek water for tea, hoping the heat will kill whatever is living in it. You make a new damper, this time with more care. The result is marginally better. You sit on a log by your fire, eating your salty, tough mutton and your slightly less raw damper, and drinking your gritty tea. It's hot and it fills your stomach, which is the most you can ask for. As darkness falls, the camp's social life begins. While many exhausted miners simply crawl into their tents, others are looking for something more. And that something is usually grog. Officially, the sale of alcoholic spirits was illegal on the goldfields. The government, in a fit of moral paternalism, believed that alcohol would lead to chaos and violence among the diggers. This, of course, did not stop a drop of liquor from being sold. It simply created a massive and highly profitable black market. You hear bursts of loud singing and laughter coming from a particularly large, windowless tent not far from your claim. This is a sly grog shop, an illegal tavern operating in plain sight. Here, for an outrageous price, a man could buy a pannikin of grog, a dubious concoction that was rarely what it claimed to be. It might be brandy diluted with water and spiced with tobacco juice for color and bite. It could be gin made from raw spirits and flavored with turpentine. The diggers had colorful names for this stuff: she-oak, chain lightning, strike me dead. The quality was appalling and the effects were potent, often leading to brutal hangovers or even poisoning. Yet the Sly Grog shops were always full. They offered an escape from the misery of the daily grind, a place for camaraderie and a temporary, chemical-induced joy. You are tempted, not by the drink, but by the sound of human connection. But your funds are low, and the stories you've heard of men being cheated, robbed, or beaten in these places are enough to keep you away. You finish your meal, the taste of grease and salt lingering in your mouth. You look at your remaining food supplies. It's not much. You realize that your life here is a constant race. You have to find enough gold to pay for the food that gives you the energy to dig for more gold. It's a vicious, self-perpetuating cycle of labor and consumption. For a moment, you long for the simple, boring predictability of a meal that doesn't taste of desperation. Section 6. After a few days of back-breaking, fruitless labor, a new anxiety begins to creep in, one that has nothing to do with dirt or food. It arrives in the form of two men on horseback, threading their way slowly through the chaotic maze of claims. One is a man in a smart blue uniform with gold braiding on the cuffs, a gold commissioner. The other is a trooper, a mounted policeman in a similar but less ornate uniform, a carbine resting in a scabbard on his saddle. They are the physical embodiment of government authority in this wild place, and they are not here to help. They are conducting a license hunt. As they ride past, you see them stop at a claim and the commissioner demands something from the diggers. The diggers sullenly produce a small piece of paper. This is the gold license, the document that gives a man the right to search for gold, and it is the most hated institution on the diggings. The government of Victoria, seeing a massive, untaxable population of miners springing up, had instituted the license system as a way to generate revenue and maintain control. Every single man on the goldfields, whether he was finding gold or not, was required to pay a fee of 30 shillings per month for this license. 30 shillings was a huge sum of money, especially for a newcomer like you who has yet to see a single speck of color. It didn't matter if you were sick, if your claim was barren, or if you had spent the month in futile labor. The fee was due regardless. It wasn't a tax on income, it was a tax on hope. To the diggers, it felt like a punitive and unjust system, a way for the distant, aristocratic government in Melbourne to squeeze money out of the working man. The resentment it caused was universal and palpable. You don't have a license. In the rush to get to the diggings and stake a claim, you completely forgot about this bureaucratic necessity. A knot of dread tightens in your stomach as you watch the officials get closer. You see a man on a neighboring claim argue with them. He doesn't have his license. The troopers dismount. There is a brief scuffle, and the man is handcuffed and led away. His punishment will be a hefty fine or a stint of hard labor, building roads for the very government he despises. This is the law of the goldfields. It is not about justice or protection. It is about enforcement and revenue. The troopers, often called Joes or traps by the diggers, were widely loathed. Many were ex-convicts from Tasmania, known for their arrogance and brutality. They were seen not as peacekeepers, but as uniformed bullies. The license hunts were conducted with military-style aggression, with troopers surrounding a section of the diggings and demanding papers like an occupying army. You have two choices: run and hide, or go and get a license. Running is tempting. Many diggers would shout, "The traps are coming," sending unlicensed miners scattering into the bush to hide until the hunt was over. It was a humiliating cat-and-mouse game, but you know that you can't live your life here constantly looking over your shoulder. You decide to face the inevitable. You leave your claim and make your way to the commissioner's camp. This is the official government enclave, usually situated on a hill overlooking the diggings. It's a world apart from the chaotic canvas city below. Here, the tents are large, white, and arranged in neat, military rows. There's a flagpole flying the Union Jack. Armed sentries stand guard. It feels like a colonial outpost in a foreign land, which, in many ways, it is. You find the tent marked gold licenses and join a long, sullen queue of other miners. The mood is grim. Men grumble under their breath, cursing the Queen, the governor, and the entire system. Inside the tent, a clerk, a man with a pale face and an air of bureaucratic boredom, sits at a rough wooden table. He doesn't look at you as you step forward. He simply says, "Name," and then 30 shillings. You count out the coins, a significant portion of your dwindling emergency fund. It feels like setting fire to the money. He takes the coins without a word, scribbles your name and a date on a small piece of paper, and pushes it across the table. That's it. This flimsy, expensive document is your permission to continue your life of back-breaking poverty. As you walk away, you feel a hot surge of anger and resentment. You now understand the deep-seated animosity the diggers have for the authorities. You are part of their club now, united by a shared sense of injustice. This conflict between the diggers and the authorities would eventually escalate. Historians point directly to the license fee as the primary cause of the most famous rebellion in Australian history, the Eureka Rebellion of 1854. The diggers would eventually build a stockade, raise their own flag, and fight a pitched battle against government troops. While the rebellion was quickly crushed, it led to major reforms, including the abolition of the license fee, and is often cited as a pivotal moment in the development of Australian democracy. Standing here now, with the useless piece of paper in your hand, you can feel the seeds of that rebellion all around you. A less dramatic but equally irritating aspect of the law was its application to daily life. Disputes over claim boundaries were common and often violent. The only recourse was to appeal to the commissioner, a process that was slow, arbitrary, and often seemed to favor the man who could present the most convincing or most well-connected case. There was also a constant threat of theft. With so much portable wealth in the form of gold dust and no secure banks, robberies were frequent. The troopers were far more interested in hunting for unlicensed diggers than in investigating actual crimes. You were responsible for your own security. You returned to your claim, the precious license tucked safely in your pocket. The troopers have moved on to another section of the field. You feel a strange sense of relief, but it's tainted with bitterness. You have complied. You have paid the crown for the privilege of ruining your back in a muddy hole. Looking around at the endless, grinding labor, you realize that the real law of the goldfields is not the one written on your license. It's the law of averages, the law of physics, and the unwritten law that says the house. In this case, the government always wins. The only way to beat it is to strike it rich, to find so much gold that 30 shillings becomes a laughable trifle. The thought provides a sliver of motivation. You pick up your shovel. The hole isn't going to dig itself. The days settle into a grueling, monotonous rhythm. Wake, eat your gritty damper, and then descend into your muddy pit. The work is a repeating cycle of tasks, each one more exhausting than the last. You dig into the stiff, reluctant clay, your pickaxe jarring your arms with every strike. You shovel the loosened earth into a bucket, your back muscles screaming in protest. You haul the heavy bucket up out of the hole. Then you begin the arduous process of washing it in your wobbly cradle. A solo performance of pouring and rocking that leaves you breathless and drenched in foul-smelling water. You do this hour after hour, under the harsh glare of the Australian sun. The heat is oppressive, trapped in the valley, and the air is thick with dust and flies. At the end of each cycle of washing, you perform the ritual of panning the concentrate from the cradle's riffles. You swish and swirl the contents of the pan, your eyes scanning desperately for any hint of yellow. And each time, you are met with the same result. Nothing. Just a swirl of black sand and a heart that sinks a little further. Doubt begins to fester, a cold poison in your mind. Maybe this claim is a duffer, a barren patch of ground. Maybe you chose the worst possible spot in the entire gold field. You see other men around you, men who arrived at the same time, finding small amounts of color. You hear the occasional distant cry of "got 'em." That signals a find, a sound that sends a pang of envy through you. Your hope, once a blazing fire, has dwindled to a stubborn, flickering ember. You start to understand why so many men abandon their claims, their spirits broken by the relentless, unrewarded labor. It's not just the physical toll, it's the psychological torment of constant failure. You are not just digging for gold. You are digging through layers of your own optimism. You begin to think about the life you left behind, the comfortable certainties, the predictable routines. Were they really so bad? Was this wild gamble worth it? The thought of returning home a failure, with nothing to show for your journey but calloused hands and a mountain of debt, is a terrifying prospect. That fear more than hope is what keeps you going. You can't quit now. You've invested too much of your money, your time, and your dignity. So, on the 5th day of this thankless toil, you start again. You are tired, sore, and deeply discouraged. You tell yourself this will be the last day you work this particular spot. If you find nothing by sundown, you will abandon the hole and try to find another patch of ground, a prospect that fills you with weary dread. You dig deeper than you have before. You are now several feet down, in a layer of pale, gravelly clay that is even harder to break through. Every shovelful feels twice as heavy. You fill the bucket, haul it up, and begin the familiar, hateful process at the cradle. You don't even watch the slurry coming out the end anymore. Your movements are mechanical, your mind numb. You finish washing the load and slump down, ready for the final, pointless ritual of panning. You scoop the concentrate from the cradle. You don't expect to see anything. It's just another pan of mud. You take it to the creek's edge and begin to wash it, your movements listless. The muddy water swirls away. The sand and gravel wash over the lip of the pan. You are about to toss the last of it out when something catches your eye. It's just a tiny glint. So small you think you might have imagined it, a trick of the light on a piece of mica. You stop, your heart suddenly pounding in your chest. You swirl the water more gently this time, your hands trembling slightly. The remaining black sand shifts, and there it is, unmistakable, a tiny, flat, intensely yellow flake. It's no bigger than the head of a pin, but it shines with a light that seems to fill the entire world. Gold. You stare at it, mesmerized. It's real. After all the days of sweat and failure, here is the proof. It's not a dream. You reach into the pan with a muddy finger and carefully, reverently pick it out. You hold it in the palm of your hand. It's almost weightless, but it feels as heavy as an anchor, grounding you back to your purpose. All the pain, the doubt, the misery of the past week seems to melt away in the face of this one, tiny, perfect flake. A grin spreads across your face, cracking the dried mud on your cheeks. You want to shout, to leap into the air, but you restrain yourself. Experienced diggers don't celebrate small finds. It's seen as amateurish. But inside, you are soaring. This single flake of gold changes everything. It's not a fortune, it's not even enough to buy a decent meal at the camp store, but it's a promise. It means your claim isn't barren. There is gold here. You just have to dig for it. The scientific reason for this is that gold, being heavy, tends to settle on or near the bottom, which is the layer of bedrock or hard clay beneath the looser topsoil and gravel. You have finally dug deep enough to reach the level where gold particles, washed down from some ancient, eroded reef over millennia, have come to rest. The old-timers call this bottoming out, and finding that first color on the bottom is a crucial moment. Renewed with an energy you thought you'd lost forever, you scramble back to your hole. The pickaxe feels lighter in your hands. The shovel moves with new purpose. Your work is no longer a punishment. It is a treasure hunt once more. You are no longer just digging in the dirt. You are pursuing a vein of possibility. You work with a feverish intensity, digging and washing, your eyes now sharp and focused. In the very next pan, you find two more flakes, both as small as the first. It's a confirmation. By the time the sun begins to set, you have a tiny collection of golden specks, carefully stored in a small glass vial you bought for this very purpose. The total amount is pitiful, perhaps not even a gram, but it represents a monumental victory. You have succeeded. You are no longer just a hopeful newcomer. You are a gold miner. You have found color. That night, as you eat your mutton and damper, it tastes like the finest meal you've ever had. The flickering campfire seems brighter, and the hard ground beneath you feels a little softer. The dream, which had been fading into a gray mist of reality, is once again sharp, vivid, and shining. After 6 straight days of relentless, monotonous labor, the 7th day arrives with a strange and welcome quiet. It is Sunday. By a combination of religious tradition and sheer physical necessity, Sunday is a day of rest on the goldfields. The rhythmic squeak and rumble of the cradles falls silent. The percussive beat of pickaxes is gone. The silence is so profound it feels almost unnatural, ringing in your ears after the constant noise of the working week. This day of rest is a peculiar mix of the sacred and the profane, a time for chores, reflection, and entertainment. You wake late, the sun already high in the sky, streaming through the canvas of your tent. Your body is a tapestry of aches and pains, but the deep, bone-weary exhaustion of the previous days has receded slightly. The first order of business is domestic. The week's worth of mud-caked clothes are piled in a corner of your tent, stiff and smelling of sweat and damp earth. It is laundry day. You gather your clothes and a small piece of soap and join the procession of men heading to the creek. The water is still brown and murky, but it's the only water there is. You find a spot on the bank, kneel in the mud, and begin the unpleasant task of scrubbing your shirt and trousers against a smooth rock. The soap produces a gray, reluctant lather that does little to shift the deeper stains. You are washing your clothes in the same water that everyone else uses for their laundry, their dishes, their gold washing, and, discreetly, their personal hygiene. It's a process that likely adds as much grime as it removes. There are no washing machines, no gentle cycles, just brute force and a prayer that your clothes will be slightly less disgusting when you're done. After laying your wet clothes out on a bush to dry in the sun, you turn to personal grooming. You heat some water over your fire and indulge in the luxury of a shave. Using a small, cracked piece of mirror propped against a rock, you scrape away a week's worth of stubble. It's a small act of civilization in the midst of squalor, a way to reclaim a piece of your former self. You feel almost human again. With your chores done, you have the rest of the day to yourself. The camp has a different atmosphere on Sundays. The frantic, competitive energy is gone, replaced by a more relaxed, communal feel. Men sit outside their tents, mending tools, writing letters home, or simply talking. For the first time, you have proper conversations with your neighbors. You share news, complain about the price of flour, and debate the likely location of the next big gold rush. So before this great story continues, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're enjoying our journey together. Your support means the world. In the center of the camp, a crowd is gathering. This is the Sunday service. An itinerant preacher, a fiery man with a booming voice and a wild beard, stands on a tree stump, his Bible held aloft. He preaches a sermon of fire and brimstone, condemning the greed, the gambling, and the godlessness of the diggings. His audience is a mix of the devout, the curious, and the hungover. Some men listen intently, their heads bowed in prayer. Others heckle from the sidelines. It's a strange and very public display of faith, a reminder of the world and the morals that many of these men left behind. Historians note that while the goldfields had a reputation for lawlessness, religion still played a significant role. For many, it was a source of comfort and a moral compass in a world that had none. Not far from the sermon, a different kind of gathering is taking place. This is the spiel, the domain of the con man and the quack. A man in a flashy waistcoat stands on a wooden crate, selling bottles of a miraculous elixir that he claims can cure everything from dysentery to baldness. Another man is running a game of three-card Monte, his hands moving in a bewilderingly fast dance as he fleeces hopeful newcomers of their gold dust. There are impromptu boxing matches, wrestling bouts, and dog fights, with men wagering eagerly on the outcome. It's a chaotic carnival of vice and entertainment, a stark contrast to the piety of the open-air church service just a stone's throw away. You wander through this Sunday market of souls, observing the spectacle. You have no money to spare for miracle cures or games of chance. Instead, you find yourself drawn to a quieter corner of the camp where men are gathered to read. Newspapers from Melbourne, sometimes weeks old, are a precious commodity. A man who can read will often hold a public reading, his audience listening intently for news from the outside world. Shipping arrivals, political debates in Britain, the price of wool. It's a tenuous but vital link to the life beyond the diggings, a reminder that there is a world that doesn't revolve around mud and gold. This thirst for information was insatiable. A quirky fact is that some of the earliest and most successful local newspapers in Australia were founded on the goldfields to cater to this captive audience. As the afternoon wears on, you return to your claim. You sit on your log watching your clothes dry. You take out the small vial containing your gold flakes. You swirl it, watching the tiny specks catch the light. It's not much, but it's a start. You feel a sense of quiet satisfaction. This day of rest, with its strange mix of chores, religion, and vice, has recharged you. It has reminded you that you are part of a vast, struggling community, a temporary city built on a foundation of shared hardship and a common, glittering dream. The silence of Sunday has allowed you to hear your own thoughts again, to reassess, and to find the strength to face another week in the pits. As the sun sets, casting long shadows across the valley, you can almost feel the entire camp taking a collective deep breath, bracing itself for the noise to begin again at dawn. As you settle into the routine of the diggings, you become aware of a constant, lurking threat that has nothing to do with collapsing mine shafts or claim jumpers. It is the threat of sickness. The camp, for all its energy and life, is an incredibly unhealthy place. It is a sprawling, temporary city with no sanitation, no clean water, and no public health infrastructure whatsoever. Disease is not a possibility. It is an inevitability. The primary culprit is the water. The once pristine creek, the single source of water for thousands of men, is now a repository of all the camp's waste. Upstream, men are washing their clothes, their bodies, and their dogs. All along its length, the runoff from thousands of gold-washing cradles pours a constant stream of mud and silt into it. The refuse from makeshift butcheries and cooking fires is tossed onto its banks. And most dangerously, the area is riddled with poorly dug latrines, or in many cases, no latrines at all, with human waste seeping directly into the water table. The creek is essentially an open sewer. You try to be careful. You boil all your drinking water, a tedious but necessary chore. But you can't avoid the water entirely. You wash your clothes in it, your dishes in it, and you are splashed with it all day long while you work your cradle. It's a game of Russian roulette with microbes. The most common ailment to spring from this contaminated environment is dysentery, known on the field simply as the blight or colonial fever. It's a brutal, dehydrating illness that leaves strong men weak and delirious in a matter of days. You see its effects everywhere. Men stumbling from their tents, pale and gaunt. The sounds of violent sickness echoing through the thin canvas walls at night. Makeshift graves appearing on the hillside with increasing frequency. There are no real doctors here. In their place is a flock of quacks, charlatans and snake oil salesmen who prey on the sick and desperate. You saw one on Sunday, but during the week, they practice their trade on a more personal level. They have no medical training, but they possess an impressive confidence and a suitcase full of dubious remedies. Their treatments are often more dangerous than the diseases they claim to cure. A common prescription for dysentery was a massive dose of mercury, which would certainly clean out the patient's system, often along with most of their internal organs. Another popular treatment was laudanum, an alcoholic tincture of opium, which would ease the pain and suffering by rendering the patient unconscious. One of your neighbors, a young man named Thomas you've shared a few conversations with, falls ill. You see him grow weaker each day until he can no longer work his claim. A doctor is summoned, a man with a stained coat and an oily smile. He diagnoses the problem with a confident nod and sells Thomas an expensive bottle of dark, foul-smelling liquid. For a day, Thomas seems to rally, mostly due to the high alcohol content of the medicine. But then he crashes, worse than before. You do what you can, bringing him boiled water, but you feel utterly helpless. There is no hospital, no clinic, no one to turn to. His friends eventually carry him away, hoping to get him to the nearest town with a real physician, but you know his chances are slim. His abandoned claim is a somber reminder of how quickly a man's fortunes can change. Sickness is not the only danger preying on the miners. The camp is also rife with scams and confidence tricks, all designed to separate a digger from his hard-won gold dust. You have already seen the card sharps and the sellers of fake gold nuggets, lumps of lead cleverly coated with a thin layer of real gold. But there are more subtle cons at play. One of the most common is the salting of a claim. A dishonest miner will take a worthless piece of ground and salt it by firing a shotgun loaded with fine gold dust into the earth. They will then sell the claim to an unsuspecting newcomer, demonstrating its richness by panning a sample of the salted dirt. The new owner will work for weeks, finding nothing, before realizing they've been duped. By then, the seller is long gone. Historians argue about how widespread this practice truly was, with some seeing it as a legendary tall tale, and others insisting it was a common and cynical reality of the rushes. You witness a version of this yourself. A man is trying to sell his claim, loudly proclaiming its richness. He has a few small nuggets displayed on a piece of velvet. A crowd gathers. A potential buyer asks for a demonstration. The seller grandly pans a bucket of dirt from the claim and, to everyone's amazement, reveals a small, handsome nugget. The buyer is convinced and a deal is struck, the claim changing hands for a hefty price in gold dust. Later, you overhear two old-timers chuckling. The seller, they explain, had the nugget concealed in his fingernail the entire time, releasing it into the pan at the opportune moment. It's a simple trick, but devastatingly effective. These constant threats, from disease, from quacks, from thieves and con men, create an atmosphere of deep-seated paranoia. You learn to be wary of everyone. You trust no one with your small vial of gold, keeping it on your person at all times. You become suspicious of friendly strangers offering to go into partnership. Every interaction is colored by the possibility of deception. It's an exhausting way to live, eroding the spirit of community that might otherwise have flourished. This is the dark underbelly of the gold rush dream. For every man trying to make an honest living through hard labor, there was another trying to make a dishonest one through cunning and deceit. You lie in your tent at night, listening to the coughing and groaning from the surrounding tents. You think of Thomas. You clutch the small vial of gold in your pocket. It is your only defense, your only hope of buying your way out of this precarious existence. You feel a profound appreciation for the simple, boring safety of the modern world. A world with clean water, real doctors, and laws that actually protect you from scams. Here, your only protection is your own vigilance and a great deal of luck. You say a silent prayer, not to the preacher's fiery God, but to the God of healthy stomachs and honest men, hoping to be spared from the blight and the con for one more day. One afternoon, while searching for a better piece of timber to repair your wobbly cradle, you wander further down the creek than usual. You round a bend and the landscape changes. The chaotic, individualistic sprawl of European tents gives way to a more orderly and densely packed settlement. The tents are lower, often with neat bamboo or timber frames. Small, immaculately tended vegetable gardens sit in front of many of them, growing strange-looking greens. The air smells different here, a mix of unfamiliar cooking spices, incense, and the sweet, cloying aroma of opium. You have arrived at the Chinese camp. This is a completely separate world, a self-contained community living and working alongside the main rush, yet almost entirely segregated from it. The European miners, a mix of British, Irish, Americans, and Germans, view the Chinese with a mixture of suspicion, resentment, and outright racism. They are a convenient scapegoat for every problem on the diggings, from declining gold yields to the high price of flour. The Chinese, in turn, keep to themselves, finding safety and stability in their own social structures. As you walk cautiously along the edge of their settlement, you notice the differences in their mining techniques. While the Europeans favor the brute force approach of digging deep shafts and washing huge quantities of dirt in cradles, the Chinese are more meticulous. You see teams of men working together with an efficiency that is almost hypnotic. They often work abandoned European claims, the so-called tailings. They rewash the piles of discarded dirt and gravel that the Europeans, in their haste, considered worthless. Their methods are slower, more patient, and remarkably effective. They use different equipment. You see them using puddling tubs, large wooden vats where clay-heavy soil is mixed with water and stirred with a rake until it breaks down into a slurry, releasing the fine gold particles. They also use a more elaborate version of the cradle, a longer, more complex rocker that requires a team of several men to operate, but which is far more efficient at capturing the tiniest specks of gold. It is a lesson in thoroughness. The Europeans are hunting for nuggets, the Chinese are patiently accumulating dust, and in the long run, the dust often added up to more than the nuggets. This efficiency was a source of great friction. European miners, frustrated with their own lack of success, would look at the steady, methodical work of the Chinese and see not diligence, but a mysterious, unfair advantage. This led to a pervasive myth, a piece of historical fake news, that the Chinese knew some secret, almost magical technique for finding gold. The reality, of course, was simply hard work, cooperation, and a focus on recovering the fine gold that others discarded. The social structure is also visibly different. In the European camp, the primary unit is the individual or the small partnership of 2 or 3 mates. Here, you see men working in large, organized groups. These groups were often based on kinship or district of origin from back in China. They were led by a headman who would organize the work, manage the finances, and purchase supplies for the entire group. This collective approach provided a powerful social safety net. A man who was sick would be cared for by his group. A newcomer would be fed and housed until he could contribute. It was a stark contrast to the every man for himself ethos of your side of the creek. You pass one of their stores. Instead of mutton and flour, you see boxes of dried fish, barrels of rice, and strange, unfamiliar dried vegetables. The sounds are different too. The chatter is in a language you don't understand, the cadence rising and falling in a musical way. From one of the larger tents, you hear the high-pitched, reedy sound of a traditional Chinese instrument being played. It's a haunting, melancholic melody that seems a world away from the rowdy, drunken singing of the sly grog shops. A few European miners are here, but they are not socializing. They are customers. The Chinese camp had a reputation for certain services. There were skilled doctors who practiced traditional Chinese medicine, often more effective and certainly less lethal than the quackery of the European doctors. There were cooks who ran informal restaurants, offering a welcome and flavorful alternative to the endless cycle of greasy mutton. And most famously, there were the opium tents, dimly lit dens where a man could purchase a pipe and drift away from the harsh realities of the goldfields for a few hours. Your presence here does not go unnoticed. The Chinese miners watch you as you pass. Their expressions are not hostile, but guarded, wary. They have learned from bitter experience to be cautious of Europeans. There have been violent riots on other goldfields, where mobs of white miners have attacked Chinese camps, burning their tents and destroying their equipment in a fit of racist fury. While this particular camp seems peaceful, the tension is an invisible wall between you. You feel a pang of shame for the open hostility you've heard from your fellow miners. These men are just like you. They have traveled halfway across the world, leaving their families and homes behind, all in pursuit of the same dream. They are enduring the same hardships, the same bad food, the same diseases. Yet they are treated as unwelcome outsiders. We can only speculate about the personal stories of these men, the individual hopes and fears hidden behind their collective identity. The historical record is largely silent on their personal experiences, written mostly by the white colonists who viewed them as an undifferentiated mass. As you turn to leave, You see a man carefully tending to a small patch of bok choy. He works with a gentle, focused grace that is captivating to watch. He looks up and your eyes meet for a brief moment. There is no anger in his gaze, just a kind of weary resignation. In that moment, you don't see a Chinaman, a caricature from a racist joke. You see a fellow farmer, a fellow exile, trying to cultivate a small piece of home in a hostile land. The brief encounter stays with you as you walk back to your own chaotic, individualistic world. A silent reminder that the gold rush was not one story, but many, and that some stories are more difficult to hear than others. Weeks bleed into one another, marked only by the passing of Sundays. Your life is a blur of mud, sweat, and the small, thrilling glint of gold in your pan. You are becoming a creature of the diggings. Your hands are permanently calloused. Your skin is tanned to the color of leather, and you can now instinctively tell the difference between promising wash dirt and useless topsoil. You have even made a few acquaintances, men on the neighboring claims with whom you share a grumbling camaraderie. But despite this, a deep sense of isolation persists, a feeling of being disconnected from the real world. The only cure for this ailment is news from home. The arrival of the mail is the most significant event in the camp's social calendar, more exciting than a gold strike and more uplifting than a Sunday sermon. There is no formal postal service to the diggings. Mail is carried by private couriers, entrepreneurial men on horseback who charge a steep fee to make the perilous journey from Melbourne. When a mailman is spotted riding into the camp, a shout goes up, and a crowd quickly gathers at the main store where he sets up his temporary post office. You have been waiting for this day for months. You wrote a letter home before you even left Melbourne, a letter full of hope and bravado, promising to return a rich man. You know a reply could have been waiting in the city for weeks. You join the anxious crowd, a knot of anticipation in your stomach. The mailman, a weathered-looking man with a leather satchel, calls out the names on the letters one by one. The scene is one of raw, naked emotion. Men's faces are tight with hope. When a name is called, the man pushes forward, his hands trembling as he pays the courier and receives his precious cargo. Some men tear their letters open on the spot, their faces breaking into wide smiles or crumbling in sorrow as they read. Others clutch their letters to their chests and walk away to find a private place to read, wanting to savor or endure the news alone. For every man who gets a letter, there are 10 who do not. They drift away from the crowd, their disappointment a heavy cloak on their shoulders. "William Bell," the mailman shouts. Your heart leaps. That's you. You push through the crowd, your voice thick as you confirm your name. You hand over the coins, and the mailman places a thin, folded envelope in your hand. It has traveled 15,000 miles to find you in this muddy valley. The handwriting is your sister's, elegant and familiar. It feels like a relic from another life. You don't read it there. You carry it back to your tent, holding it carefully, as if it were made of spun glass. You sit on your bedroll, the canvas walls of your tiny home providing a sliver of privacy. You take a deep breath and break the wax seal. The letter is dated 4 months ago. The news within is a slice of a life that was once yours, now rendered distant and strange. Your sister writes of family matters, of births and minor illnesses. She tells you about the weather, about a neighbor's wedding, about the new vicar at the local church. It's a litany of the mundane, the small, everyday details of a life you abandoned. And it is devastatingly beautiful. You read about a winter storm and you can almost feel the familiar chill, smell the coal smoke from the hearth. You read about a walk in the woods and you can picture the green, damp softness of the English countryside, a world away from this harsh, sun-bleached landscape. Every line is a bittersweet reminder of what you've given up. There's a profound disconnect between the world described in the letter and your current reality. Your sister worries if you are eating well, and you think of your diet of gritty damper and greasy mutton. She hopes you have found comfortable lodgings, and you glance around your cramped, dusty tent. The gap between their perception of your adventure and the squalid reality is a chasm. There's no way to explain the mud, the flies, the constant grinding labor, the casual misery of it all. You feel a surge of love and a profound sense of homesickness that is almost a physical pain. This communication lag is a defining feature of the era. A question asked in a letter would not receive a reply for the better part of a year. By the time you read news from home, it is already history. This is a fact that historians often emphasize when discussing the psychological state of immigrants and colonists in the 19th century. They were living in a state of perpetual uncertainty, cut off from their support networks by an almost unimaginable gulf of time and distance. Tucked inside your sister's letter is a small, folded cutting from a local newspaper. It's a short article about the Australian goldfields, full of breathless exaggeration. It speaks of mountains of gold and fortunes made in a single day. It paints a picture of a land of easy riches, a paradise for the ambitious working man. You read it with a cynical, hollow laugh. This is the propaganda that lured you here. This is the lie that is still drawing thousands more to this life of hardship. It's a stark reminder of the power of the press to shape dreams and delusions. After you have read the letter 3 times, you fold it carefully and place it in your small wooden chest with your license and your vial of gold. It is now one of your most treasured possessions. The letter is both a comfort and a torment. It has reconnected you to your past, but it has also sharpened the pain of your present isolation. It fuels your determination. The only way to bridge the gap between their world and yours, the only way to make the sacrifice worthwhile, is to succeed. The tiny flakes of gold at the bottom of your vial are no longer just a potential profit. They are your ticket home, your proof that this whole, mad enterprise was not a terrible mistake. The news from the outside world has both fortified and wounded you. You crawl out of your tent into the harsh afternoon light. The camp is as noisy and chaotic as ever. The men are still toiling in their pits. Nothing has changed, and yet, for you, everything feels different. You are carrying a small piece of home inside you, a memory of a softer, greener world that you are now more desperate than ever to earn your way back to. The gold in your vial has been accumulating, flake by tiny flake. It's a small but growing hoard, a tangible result of weeks of punishing labor. But it's also a source of constant anxiety. Carrying it on your person feels risky, yet leaving it in your tent feels even more so. The camp is full of stories of men whose poke, Their small leather bag of gold dust was stolen while they slept or worked. You need a better way to spend some of it than just on overpriced flour. You need a release. And so, one evening, you decide to venture into the forbidden heart of the camp's social life, the Sly Grog shop. You've avoided these places until now, wary of the stories of drugged drinks, fixed card games, and sudden violence. But the desire for something other than water or weak tea, and the allure of company, finally wins out. You choose a large, sprawling tent not far from your claim, a place from which boisterous singing and laughter has emanated every night. It has no sign, of course, but its purpose is an open secret. You pull back the heavy canvas flap and step inside. The change in atmosphere is immediate and overwhelming. The air is thick with the fug of cheap tobacco smoke, spilled liquor, and the heat of dozens of bodies packed into a confined space. The light is dim, coming from a few smoky, foul-smelling tallow lamps that cast long, dancing shadows on the canvas walls. The floor is just bare, trodden earth, sticky in places. The noise is a wall of sound. Loud arguments, bursts of laughter, and a group of men in the corner singing a sea shanty, their voices loud and off-key. The bar is a series of rough planks laid across two barrels. Behind it, a large, grim-faced woman with arms as thick as your legs dispenses drinks. She is the grog seller, and she rules her domain with an iron fist. There are no fancy glasses here. The drink is served in pannikins, the same tin cups that the diggers use for tea. You push your way to the bar, feeling self-conscious and out of place. "What'll it be?" the woman grunts, her eyes sizing you up. You ask for a brandy, hoping for a taste of something familiar and civilized. She lets out a short, humorless laugh. "We got one kind of brandy," she says, making air quotes with her fingers. "2 shillings. The price is extortionate, but you're here now." You carefully untie your poke and pour a tiny pinch of gold dust onto the small set of scales she keeps on the bar. She squints at it, nods, and then fills a pannikin from a large, unlabeled stone jug. The liquid is a pale amber color. You take the cup and retreat to a corner, finding a small patch of space on a crowded bench. You take a tentative sip. It is fire. It tastes vaguely of caramel and pepper, but mostly it tastes of raw, harsh alcohol. It burns all the way down to your stomach, leaving a chemical aftertaste. This is the infamous chain lightning you've heard about. You can feel its heat spreading through your veins almost instantly. It's a crude and potent drink, designed for maximum effect with minimum quality. Scholars have analyzed diggers' diaries and letters that describe the horrific ingredients believed to be in these drinks, including chili powder, tobacco juice for color, and even sulfuric acid to add a bite. Your single sip feels like confirmation of these grim recipes. Despite the vile taste, you take another, smaller sip. The effect is undeniable. A warm, pleasant buzz begins to spread through your limbs, softening the edges of your exhaustion and anxiety. The aches in your back and shoulders seem to recede. The noise of the tent becomes less of a chaotic din and more of a companionable roar. You start to understand the appeal. This isn't about savoring a fine spirit. It's about purchasing a temporary oblivion. You listen to the conversations around you. This is the camp's true information exchange. Here, Men speak more freely than they do out on the claims. You hear a heated debate about the latest government regulations. You hear a detailed, and likely exaggerated, account of a large nugget found over on the next gully. You hear men sharing news from other goldfields, passing on rumors of new rushes hundreds of miles away. This is where the camp's collective mood is gauged, where frustrations are aired and hopes are shared. It's a far more honest newspaper than the one you read a few weeks ago. You also see the darker side. In a corner, a high-stakes card game is underway. The men are playing for gold dust, their pokes on the table in front of them. Their faces are tense, their eyes narrowed. The mood is thick with greed and suspicion. You watch for a few minutes and quickly realize you have no idea what the rules are, but you can see that a great deal of gold is changing hands on the turn of a single card. A fight breaks out near the bar. It's a sudden, clumsy affair between two drunken men, a flurry of wild punches that mostly miss their mark. The big woman behind the bar doesn't even flinch. She simply bellows, "Take it outside," and two larger men, who appear to be her unofficial bouncers, grab the combatants and haul them out through the tent flap. The incident is over in seconds, and the noise level in the tent returns to its previous volume as if nothing happened. Violence is just another part of the evening's entertainment. You nurse your drink for nearly an hour, making it last. The initial warm buzz has settled into a dull, heavy feeling. The smoke is starting to make your eyes water, and the noise is giving you a headache. The temporary escape has lost its charm, and the reality of the place, the desperation, the potential for violence, the sheer griminess of it all, begins to set in again. You've had your taste of the forbidden world, and you've learned what you came for. The Sly Grog shop is not a place of community. It's a place where lonely, desperate men gather to forget how lonely and desperate they are. You place your empty pannikin on the floor and slip out through the canvas flap, back into the cool night air. The stars are brilliant in the clear sky, a silent, beautiful contrast to the sordid scene you just left. You take a deep breath, clearing the smoke and stale liquor from your lungs. Your head is swimming slightly, and you know you'll feel the effects of that one drink in the morning. As you walk back to your tent, you feel a renewed sense of purpose. The Sly Grog shop is a trap, a way to bleed your hard-won gold away, one fiery sip at a time. Your future isn't at the bottom of a pannikin, it's in the bottom of your claim. One morning, you are jolted awake not by the usual sounds of labor, but by a different kind of noise. It's a sound of frantic, excited shouting that spreads through the camp like a contagion. Men are emerging from their tents, calling to one another, their voices sharp with urgency. Something is happening. You crawl outside, your mind still fuzzy with sleep, and see your neighbor hastily packing his swag, his movements jerky and hurried. "What is it?" you ask him. "A rush," he says, his eyes wild with excitement. He doesn't stop his work. "Word came in last night. A shepherd found a monster nugget over at Mount Alexander, 50 miles from here. They say the ground is littered with them. You can pick them up off the surface." This is the news that every digger both dreads and dreams of. A new rush. It's a phenomenon that defined the goldfields, a mass hysteria fueled by rumor and desperation. The story is always the same. A spectacular find in a new location. with reports, always exaggerated, of gold so plentiful you can't fail to find it. It's an irresistible siren song to men who have been toiling for weeks or months for meager returns. The camp is instantly thrown into chaos. The fragile routines of the past weeks are shattered. Men are abandoning their claims, some of which they have spent months laboring on. They are tearing down their tents, packing their meager belongings, and getting ready to walk 50 miles on the strength of a rumor. It's a massive, collective gamble. They are trading the known, however disappointing, for the unknown, however promising. You are faced with a terrible choice. Do you stay or do you go? Your claim is finally producing. It's not a fortune, but it's a steady, reliable trickle of gold. You have invested weeks of your life into that hole in the ground. To abandon it now feels like a betrayal of all your hard work. But the seed of doubt is planted. What if the rumors are true? What if you are here, painstakingly washing ounces of dirt for a few flakes, while men 50 miles away are tripping over nuggets the size of potatoes? The fear of missing out, a quintessentially modern anxiety, was a powerful force on the goldfields. You watch the exodus. It's a river of humanity flowing out of the camp. Men with swags on their backs, pushing wheelbarrows piled high with their possessions, or leading pack horses laden with cradles and supplies. Their faces are set with a grim determination, a wild hope burning in their eyes. The camp, which just yesterday was a bustling city of 5,000 people, is emptying out before your eyes. By midday, it feels half deserted. The familiar hum of industry is gone, replaced by an eerie quiet. The decision is agonizing. You walk over to your claim and look down into the hole you have so painstakingly dug. It represents security, of a sort. The new rush represents a chance at a fortune. It's the difference between being a wage earner, paid in tiny increments by the earth, and winning the lottery. You talk to one of the few old-timers who isn't packing. He's a grizzled man with a cynical look in his eye, who has seen a dozen of these rushes come and go. "Fool's gold," he spits, gesturing at the departing stream of men. "It's always the same. There might be a bit of color over there, sure. But by the time this lot gets there, every inch will be claimed. They'll find nothing but disappointment. Most of them will be back here in a month with empty pockets and sore feet." He pauses, then adds, "The real gold is in the ground beneath your feet, not in some story from a fella you've never met." His words resonate with you. The rumor is flimsy, a shepherd, an unnamed source. It has all the hallmarks of a wild exaggeration, and yet the temptation is immense. This phenomenon of rushes is something historians see as a key feature of the Australian goldfields. They were often sparked by very little real evidence, but they created a pattern of intense mobility and instability. Camps would spring up and disappear in a matter of weeks. The entire population was in a constant state of flux, chasing the next big promise. You also witness a darker side of the rush. As men hastily abandon their claims, a new type of opportunist emerges. These are the claim jumpers who move in to take over the abandoned ground. A claim was only considered valid if it was being actively worked. A man who left for a new rush was technically forfeiting his rights. You see arguments break out. Men who were neighbors yesterday now squaring off over a patch of dirt, one desperate to leave, the other eager to take his place. In the end, you make your choice. You decide to stay. It's a decision born not of courage, but of a kind of weary pragmatism. You are too tired to walk 50 miles. You are too invested in the small, reliable reality of your own claim to chase a glittering fantasy. You choose the devil you know. The next few days are strange and quiet. The camp feels like a ghost town. The competition for resources is gone. The creek water runs slightly clearer. The firewood is easier to find. But there is a profound sense of loneliness, and the nagging doubt remains. Every time you pull a pan of dirt from your claim and find only a few flakes, you wonder if you made a mistake. You imagine the scene at Mount Alexander, a chaotic, joyous festival of gold, and you feel a pang of regret. But then, a week later, the first men begin to trickle back. They are not triumphant heroes returning with pockets full of nuggets. They are exhausted, broke, and utterly demoralized. The stories they tell confirm the old-timers' prediction. The rumor was a wild exaggeration. There had been a small find, but the ground was limited and was claimed within hours by those who were already in the area. The thousands who rushed there from other fields found nothing. Many had to sell their tools and supplies just to afford food for the journey back. They had gambled everything on a rumor and lost. You feel a quiet sense of vindication. Your patient, unglamorous labor has paid off. While they were on their fruitless journey, you have been steadily adding to your vial of gold. It's a powerful lesson in the nature of luck and work. You have learned that the steady pursuit of a small gain is often a wiser path than the reckless pursuit of a fantasy. The ghost town slowly comes back to life as the defeated men return, and the familiar hum of industry starts up again, a little more subdued, a little more cynical than before. Just as the camp seems to be recovering from the disruption of the rush, a new and more formidable enemy arrives. It doesn't come on horseback with a rumor, but on the wind. The hot, dry days of the Australian summer begin to fade, replaced by a creeping chill in the air. The sky, once a brilliant, endless blue, becomes a low, oppressive ceiling of gray. Winter is coming to the goldfields, and it will transform the daily struggle into a new circle of misery. The first rains are almost a relief after the dust and heat, but the relief is short-lived. The rain is not a gentle, cleansing shower. It is a cold, relentless downpour that lasts for days on end. The parched, cracked earth of the camp cannot absorb the deluge. Within a day, the entire valley is transformed into a quagmire. The carefully trodden paths between the tents disappear, replaced by treacherous channels of thick, deep mud. The very ground beneath your feet becomes your enemy. Your tent, which offered some small protection from the sun, is woefully inadequate against the rain. The canvas, though you treated it with wax, soon becomes saturated. A slow, steady drip begins right over your sleeping area. You place your panning dish underneath it, and the rhythmic plink of water hitting metal becomes a maddening soundtrack to your nights. The ground inside your tent turns cold and damp, a permanent chill that seeps into your bones and makes sleep a shivering, restless affair. The work does not stop. Gold does not wait for good weather. But now, every single task is 10 times harder. The sides of your claim, softened by the rain, are in constant danger of collapse. You have to work cautiously, always watching the walls of your earthen pit for signs of instability. You see abandoned claims nearby suddenly slump inwards, filling with a slurry of mud and water. The simple act of climbing in and out of your hole is a treacherous exercise in staying upright. The mud is everywhere. It cakes your boots, weighing them down like blocks of lead. It clings to your trousers up to the knees. It gets on your hands, under your fingernails, and, seemingly, into your very soul. The work at the cradle becomes an exercise in absurdity. You are washing mud with muddy water to find tiny specks of gold hidden in more mud. The creek, now a raging brown torrent, threatens to sweep your cradle away if you place it too close. You are perpetually cold, perpetually damp, and perpetually filthy. The mood of the camp plummets. The cheerful banter and optimistic speculation are gone, replaced by grim-faced endurance. The only warmth to be found is by the campfires, but even these are difficult to maintain. Firewood, already scavenged bare from the surrounding area, is now soaked and reluctant to burn. The camp is shrouded in a perpetual haze of damp, acrid smoke that stings the eyes and offers little comfort. Sickness, which was already a constant threat, now thrives. The cold and damp bring on racking coughs, fevers, and what the diggers call rheumatism, a deep, agonizing ache in the joints. The lack of dry clothes and bedding means that men are living in a state of constant chill, weakening their resistance to every passing ailment. The quack doctors do a brisk trade in useless cough syrups and warming tonics that are mostly just spiced rum. One of the more peculiar and miserable aspects of winter, a detail often found in diggers' diaries, was the plight of their boots. Leather, when constantly wet and then dried by a fire, would shrink and harden, becoming stiff and painful torture devices. A man's boots were his most essential tool besides his shovel, and having them fail or become unwearable was a major crisis. You spend your evenings trying to grease your own boots with mutton fat, a smelly and not particularly effective method of trying to keep the leather supple. Your small hoard of gold is a comfort, but it provides no warmth. The price of food, already high, skyrockets. The bullock teams that bring supplies from Melbourne get bogged down for weeks on the impassable roads, which have become rivers of mud. Flour, tea, and sugar become luxury items. The diet of the camp becomes even more monotonous and grim. Men are forced to spend their hard-won gold dust not on a ticket home, but simply on surviving until the spring. You see the ingenuity that hardship inspires. Men dig complex drainage channels around their tents. They built raised wooden platforms to sleep on, trying to escape the damp earth. They construct makeshift chimneys of stone and mud for their campfires, trying to draw the smoke away from their living spaces. It is a testament to human resilience, this stubborn refusal to be defeated by the elements. But it is a grim and joyless existence. One particularly cold and wet evening, you huddle in your leaking tent, wrapped in every piece of clothing you own. The sound of the rain on the canvas is a relentless drumbeat. You are cold, you are hungry, and you are profoundly miserable. You take out your sister's letter, but reading about the cozy hearths of home is too painful tonight. You think about the propaganda that brought you here, the images of a sun-drenched paradise. It feels like a cruel, elaborate lie. The reality of the Australian gold rush was not just one of labor, but of climate. The continent's weather was a character in the story, capable of both brutal heat and crushing, miserable cold. For the miners from the green and gentle climate of the British Isles, the Victorian winter was a profound shock. They were unprepared for the dampness, the mud, and the sheer, grinding misery of it all. As you listen to the rain, you realize that the dream of gold is not just a battle against the earth, but a war against the sky itself. And right now, the sky is winning. The winter eventually breaks. The relentless rain gives way to intermittent showers and then to cool, clear days. The sun, a welcome stranger, returns to the sky, and its warmth begins to dry the sodden earth. The sea of mud slowly recedes, leaving behind a scarred and pockmarked landscape. The camp seems to sigh in collective relief, and the familiar sounds of labor return with a renewed, if weary, vigor. You have survived. You have endured the mud, the cold, the sickness, and the despair. You have worked through it all, your small vial of gold now respectably full. It is not a fortune, not the life-changing hoard you dreamed of, but it is a significant sum. It is more money than you could have saved in 5 years of honest labor back home. And with the arrival of spring, a new feeling begins to take root in your mind, a desire to leave. The idea, once unthinkable, now dominates your thoughts. You have done what you came to do. You have faced the hardship, and you have wrested a prize from the reluctant earth. The thought of another winter in this place is unbearable. The thought of spending the rest of your life hunched over a cradle, washing dirt for diminishing returns, has lost all its romance. The gold rush, you now realize, was never meant to be a permanent life. It was a temporary madness, a means to an end. Your decision is made. You will sell your claim, your tools, and you will go home. The first step is to see exactly what you have earned. You have your vial of dust and small flakes, but you need to have it properly weighed and valued. You make your way to the gold buyer's tent, one of the few solid timber structures in the camp. Inside, it's a quiet, serious place, a world away from the chaos of the diggings. The buyer is a neat, precise man with a pair of delicate brass scales on his table. He is the final arbiter, the man who turns your labor into a number. You hand him your vial. It's a tense moment. Your entire life for the past year is contained in that small glass bottle. He unscrews the cork and carefully pours the contents onto one of the scales pans. The gold forms a small, glittering pile. He adds a series of small, stamped weights to the other pan until the two sides hang in perfect balance. He squints, makes a calculation on a piece of paper, and names a figure. The number is both wonderful and slightly disappointing. It's enough. It's enough to pay for your passage home, to settle the debts you incurred to get here, and to have a small amount left over to start a new life. It is the tangible proof of your success, but it is not the great heap of gold the newspapers promised. It is a wage, a very hard-earned wage. The buyer pays you in gold sovereigns, solid, heavy coins of the realm that feel far more real and secure than the precarious dust. This transaction, turning the raw material of the fields into the official currency of the empire, feels like a final, formal step out of the wilderness and back towards civilization. Next, you sell your claim and your tools. You find a newcomer, a man with the same hopeful, naive look in his eyes that you had when you first arrived. You show him the claim. You pan a sample of dirt to show him it still has color. And you sell him the whole enterprise. The whole, the cradle, the pick and shovel for a modest sum. You feel a pang of something as you complete the deal. You are passing on the dream or perhaps the burden. You watch him descend into your hole, his hole now, and you feel an immense sense of relief that it is no longer your responsibility. You spent your last night in the camp. You are a man transformed. You are no longer a digger. You are a traveler. You look at the sprawling canvas city with different eyes. You see the flickering campfires. You hear the distant, drunken singing, and you feel not misery, but a strange sort of nostalgia for the life you are about to leave. It was a brutal, hard, and unjust place, but it was also a place of incredible human endeavor. It was a community forged in mud and hope, and a part of you will always belong to it. The next morning, you shoulder your swag, now much lighter without the tent and tools. You walk out of the camp, heading for the track that leads back to Melbourne. You don't look back. The journey out is the reverse of your journey in. You are walking away from the chaos towards order, away from the wilderness towards the city, away from a life of desperate gambling towards a life of quiet certainty. You are one of the lucky ones. For every man like you who left with a profit, there were dozens who left with nothing but debt and broken health. And there were thousands who never left at all, their stories ending in a shallow, unmarked grave on a lonely hillside. The great Australian gold rush was not a universal story of success. It was a brutal lottery, and you happened to have drawn a winning ticket, even if it wasn't the grand prize. As you walk, you think about what you have learned. You have learned the true meaning of labor, the value of water, and the comfort of a dry bed. You have learned about the depths of human greed and the heights of human endurance. You have stared into the face of a raw, chaotic capitalism, and you have, by some miracle, come out ahead. The gold in your pocket is heavy, but the experience you carry in your mind is heavier still. You wouldn't trade it, but you would never, ever do it again. The sound of the diggings fades behind you, replaced by the gentle sounds of the Australian bush. You are heading home, a richer and a wiser man, leaving the beautiful, terrible, magnificent, and squalid dream of the gold rush behind you forever. You survived, but you would never last another day. The story of the digger, with its soaring hopes and crushing realities, became a foundational myth for a new nation. It cemented an identity of rugged individualism, of mateship born from shared hardship, and a deep-seated suspicion of authority. The gold itself transformed Australia, funding the grand Victorian architecture that still graces cities like Melbourne, and turning a remote penal colony into a vibrant destination for immigrants from all over the world. But behind that grand legacy lies the simple, human story you have just lived. The story of mud and flies and gritty damper. The story of a simple hope for a better life. A hope pursued at a terrible and sometimes wonderful cost. Now, as our story fades, feel the solid ground beneath you. Feel the comfort of your own bed, the quiet safety of your own room. The struggles of the past are a distant echo, a reminder of the simple peace and incredible luxury of the present moment. Let the noise of the diggings fade away, replaced by the soft sounds of your own peaceful space. There is no more dirt to wash, no more rain leaking through the roof. There is only rest. Let your mind drift. Let your body grow heavy and sink into a deep and well-deserved sleep.